Gary, you were convicted and found guilty of
I knew you'd bring that up, Danny. Jesus Christ.
Mate, you were convicted and found guilty for some illegal recordings. Is that right? I had to bring it up, Gary. You got a criminal record, first of all, is that right?
Yes. He's saying I'm not embarrassed by it. Let me just put up front, then we can have a laugh about things. Is that it frustrates me that I was taken off the William Tyrrell investigation. I lost my career over this, and I still maintain that what I did, I had a justifiable right to do it. Given the same set of circumstances, would I record those conversations? Shit, yeah. To me, I still maintain that I was justified in what I did. No, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry for the impact it had on the William Tyrrell investigation, because it was just the chaos that has flown from there. But you've got to be true to yourself too, I think.
Mate, all right, Gary, a big question. I'm sure people would love to know this one. What do you think happened to William?
Okay.
Can you share your
look?
Tell us what happened.
I can't, Danny. Only in that it's I've got thoughts, of possibilities.
But can you at least tell us? Do you think you know what happened?
I get asked a lot of questions like that, and one particular difficult one is, do you think William's still alive? Now, there are people I know that literally got away with murder. Yeah.
How does that feel to let some especially if it's some heinous crime? How does it feel to let someone go? I am just a man in recovery doing my very best to share a positive message of love and hope to anyone out there struggling. My name's Danny Shannon. I spent 17 years in the pain, hurt and misery of active addiction, heroin, meth, crack, anything you could get your hands on. I am absolutely blessed to have found recovery on the 15th of September 2009. This is the Kick the Shit podcast. Each week, my guests and I will share our stories around the social and emotional impacts that addiction can have on both ourselves and our loved ones. Let's go! Guys, Gary Jubelin is one of Australia's most celebrated detectives. He joined the New South Wales Police Force in 1985 and retired in 2019 as Detective Chief Inspector. During his 34-year career, he led some of the country's biggest murder investigations, including the serial killing of 3 Aboriginal children in Bowraville, the brutal gangland murder of Terry Falconer, and 7 other murders, which were featured in the Underbelly series Badness. He also ran the crime scenes following the Lindt Café. Gary, would you mind, for the purpose of this interview, state your full name and current employment?
Jesus, we have gone formal here, Danny. Yeah, okay. Gary Kevin Jubelin, and my employment, I'm not sure what I'd call myself, a journalist, a podcaster, writer, sort of a mixed bag at this stage. It used to be easy when I was a cop. Now it's a little bit more confusing.
Thank you, Gary. Mate, how does it feel to be interrogated? How does it feel to have the shoe on the other foot and be interrogated by a former criminal?
Danny, if it was, let's say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you were going to say that you're going to have me in here sitting at a desk with a camera on me asking me questions, I would have said, no way, mate. No way. But it's good. It's good. I'm enjoying it.
Absolute pleasure to have you here, Gary. And honestly, it is such an honor. Like, I can't believe... Guys, we were going to just go ahead with this interview. I was going to do it online. He was going to click a link. And Gary offered. He said, Dan, why don't we get together? He said, it's better to do this stuff in person. And I thought, well, I would be silly not to take advantage of that opportunity. And I said, yeah, Gary, I'll sort it out. And here we are, mate.
Yeah, well, it's good, isn't it? It's cool.
Gary, please, before we get started, I've got a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you. But how does a bloke like me get so lucky? And I say lucky because I am probably going to talk you up a whole bunch throughout this interview. But so lucky to have you come around to my place. I'm an ex-heroin addict, spent 17 years in the pain, hurt and misery of active addiction, and yet I've got one of Australia's most celebrated police detectives, famous for so many things, around at my house doing an interview on my podcast, bro. How does that even happen?
Well, okay. I'm glad you asked that, Danny, because I want to put it on record that when I did the podcast with you, I looked at your story and I forget how we got into contact and sat down and did the podcast with you. And we get, we caught up a bit and you get to know a person. And I got to say, I walked out of that podcast sitting down with you inspired. You just got a great outlook on life. And, mate, you've been through some hard times. And since I've been out of the cops, I've had an opportunity to explore that a little bit more, how people go down the path you did. And I think you're an inspiration. So let's spread the word. Positive outlook. No matter how low you get, you can dig your way out of it and look at life and start to enjoy life. So more than happy to be here, mate.
Thanks so much, Gary. It's funny you to say that too, because you do seem to spend a lot more of your time hanging out with criminals these days.
Yeah,
Gary.
It's funny how life changes. Yeah. Well, now that I'm a convicted criminal with the charges, I'm sure you'll ask me about that.
I certainly will, mate.
No, right, you've heard about it, have you? Look, when I was in the cops, my focus was, and I was a homicide detective for the majority of my career, so it was pretty full on. So there wasn't a lot of downtime, and you get allocated a case, you work that case, try and put someone before the courts, and then move on to the next case. That was pretty much my life, the career that I was in the policing. Since leaving there, I've had the opportunity to meet people like you, and I've always thought the world of crime is that 360 degree. Like it's not black and white. There's always a story behind the story. Yeah. When I was in the cops, I didn't have that chance. Since I've left the cops, meeting people like you, and I enjoy speaking to people. I love stories of redemption, and I'm just finding life interesting. So why I'm hanging around with more of you guys than the police? Well, it was pretty savage the way I left the police. I'm not bitter about. I'm not bitter. Here I am talking about it again. I'm not bitter about it. I love policing. I'm bitter with certain people that I believe did me wrong. But other than that, it's great, and it's nice having this conversation with people like yourself. So.
Well, we've already really got into it there, Gary. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being so honest too, because it is true, eh? Like the fact that you bring it up, obviously it has some negative impact on you, and we will dive into that soon. So before we, first I want to ask you, like, what inspired you to even become a copper in the first place?
There was nothing. I'd like to say I wanted to do good for society, and I wanted to from an early age. In all honesty, it was the furthest thing from my mind. I didn't really have a direction, like most people. I think most young people growing up. Some are smart enough to realise what they want to do and chase that. I didn't at the time. I was in the building industry, so I was just I understood the building industry. I worked when I was at school in the building industry. Yeah, went in and was doing a trade as an electrician, and I'd been in a hot ceiling pulling wires through one day in the middle of summer, having lunch in a park, and I saw two cops chasing a bad guy down the road, literally. Right. And I'm sitting there thinking, that looks like more fun. That was the first time I'd even considered joining the cops. I applied the next day, and I think I was in the academy about 6 months after that. So, wow! But when I got in there, it felt good. I enjoyed it. It felt like the right fit for me. And you're working with people.
So previous to that, you had you didn't grow. How old were you when that incident happened?
I was 21, I suppose.
So it's not as if you grew up with. What about your family? Was your family in the cops?
No cops, and the family. Why are you doing that type
sure,
situation? Okay. So it wasn't. I wasn't born into a police family or anything like that. But I wanted to work with people, and in the building industry, and I think I'm glad I spent, I think it was 5 or 6 years in the building industry, got my trade, and it set me in good stead for going into the cops, because you get to work with all sorts of people in the building trade, and it's tough. When people whinging about how hard policing is, I'd be thinking back, well, you spend the day on a jackhammer and tell me perspective.
And I imagine back then, when was that? What year was that?
We're looking 85. Yes. 85, I joined the cops.
So would you say back then it was easier to get into the cops back then than it is today?
Actually, funny you should say that. It was harder in that there was, I said 6 months. It might have been 12 months from the day I applied. there was a big waiting list, and there was a lot of culling because people wanted to go in there.
Yeah, right.
The economy at that stage, like the building industry, was pretty well stuffed. The interest rates were high, so I think there was some sort of a stable job like in the cops would be attractive. But I think they're struggling to get police now, as my understanding, which is a real shame because I promote policing all over the place. I love it for a career. There's so many different options, and but I think this day and age it's easier to get in the police than it was back then.
Such a dangerous career too, is it? Well, I mean, of course it is. But the reason I say that is I was recently involved in a little discussion with a bunch of retired police. Which was such an honor for me to do that. And some of them were talked about. One of the things they said, because I was up there on the stage talking, and he said some of the police will never even meet a guy like you, which didn't sound, it's not all police will see the carnage.
That's right, and I understand those comments, and it's you'll hear those comments, and it's quite often said in a derogatory way. It never put his hand on an angry man or something like that. But I think that's the beauty of policing. You can go to the sharp end if you want, which I was drawn to that end. Whether it was tactical police or criminal investigation, that's where I wanted to be. But there's plenty of other steps away from meeting people on the street. The general duties cops, I reckon, they're undervalued, like a good general duties cop, because they confront, and you would have seen it when you're on the street, so they're dealing with it firsthand, time and time again. So, but policing, you can find your little thing in policing. That's why I think it's such a great career, because you can move around a fair bit.
It's just strange to even be talking about this with you, considering my background. Before we go into the next question, which is an absolute beauty I want to ask you, but I feel like every single human being in some way, shape or form is affected or impacted by drug and alcohol addiction. I know for a fact, of course, every copper would be, because half the trouble out there on the streets is people addicted to heroin and what it is. So would you when you hear me say, how have you been impacted by drugs and alcohol, what would you say?
I've seen it, and I grew up in the 70s, and so I saw it. I saw
the hippies,
everyone's smoking. Then heroin hit the streets, and I lost family members through that, and also alcohol. I've seen the damage there. So, and friends. So it does impact on everyone. And part of the crime when I first started in the 80s, it was all the break and enters and the pawn shops. It would have been people like yourself running down with the VCR, 100%. Handing it into the pawn shop to get money for the next hit. So it was a big impact. But how you deal with it, how you treat it. I towards the tail end of my career, so I've only been out sort of 3 years, but I saw how damaging ice was with some cases I went to, and I'm looking at people, and it was scary. It was almost like they were soulless, in that the eyes were open, but there was nothing there, and I think that's the damage impact it can have. So I see it time and time again. It does impact on all of us, and I saw it tear families apart, and that's always sad. And it doesn't always lead to crime, but it's just destructive behaviour that can. So and that's why, if we wind it back, coming on and talking on your show, I think you're an inspiration. You're right into that addiction and going down that path, and there was only one way your life was going to head, and you managed to turn it around.
You just talked about that empty shell, that empty face, someone addicted to ice, even heroin, any of those drugs. And look, my lifestyle and the work I do, I meet a lot of those people. And I've got to say, I've become really sensitive towards some of that stuff, especially if there's children involved, which, like I've got a beautiful 5-year-old daughter. But last night, as I was doing some more research on you, actually, I thought, far out, Gary must have a big tolerance to hearing some horrible stuff, mate. I just don't have the stomach for it these days, Gary. You must have heard some horrible stuff, mate. What is it like to interview a killer?
Look, from a homicide detective's point of view, great. To me, that was
great.
Yeah, that was the pinnacle that I was aiming for. And quite often, like, investigations might take months, years, or whatever. And when you finally got the person in the interview room, that was my happy place. But pressure.
Sure.
And I say this, and the best way I can describe it, if you sit long enough with anyone, you develop a rapport. And the interviews, they might be 5-hour interviews, and there's lead up to it and all that. And it's very intense. The interview room is a very small room. There's no distractions. You're in there, and you're in each other's presence. You're in each other's space. And sometimes I'd walk out after, interviewing some bad crooks and telling me some horrendous crimes. And you'd feel dirty because I go in the interview room and not show that it's distasteful what they're talking about. I go, all right, and then what did you do? And have that come across. But when you walk out of that interview room, you do just feel dirty. Frustrating, sometimes, because sometimes you don't get the confession that you're looking for, and this person's been involved in it or has knowledge of it, and you don't get the breakthrough. But I always prepared very hard for an interview. I'd go in there and I'd be nervous. And this sounds funny when, I've been doing it for 34 years. But it was like doing anything that's important to you. You're going to have that feeling of nervousness when you walk in there. So I do all the prep, go in there, and then it's game on and go for it.
Well, I love that you just talked about the prep, because I actually did a whole bunch of prep for this interview. You make me feel proud in saying that. But when you just talk, like, you just reminded me of those long interviews. What's the longest interrogation interview you've ever been involved in?
Probably with the tapes running, it'd be 5 or 6 hours.
What, straight? Like
it's straight, and don't. It's intense, and it's a battle of wills, and it's. Knowledge is power in an interview room. So, I go in with as much knowledge as I can. So if I was interviewing you, I might be taking you on a path, knowing that, you're just digging a deeper hole for yourself.
Yeah, I bet.
Here you go. Thanks for saying that. And I'm now going to present this. So that's a lot. You've got to be totally focused on it, and listen to what the person's saying. And the best interviewers I've seen in the cops, and the ones that I tried to learn from or take, they had genuine empathy for the person. They were actually, and people were surprised. They think cops were going to come in there and slam the table and all this stuff. The good ones don't need to do that. The good ones are professional. They go in, they listen to what the person's talking about and getting them to talk. And Danny, I found in homicide investigations, it's quite interesting that people go, how did you get the person to confess? And I think we've got all sorts of tricks. Quite often people just want to unburden themselves.
Oh, I was thinking of that. Yeah.
You think of the worst thing you've done in your life, and we've all done bad things. Yeah. But when you tell someone, and all of a sudden you feel like the weight's off your shoulders. Now, put that on steroids times 10. If you've murdered someone, could you imagine the guilt that you're carrying? And sometimes people would genuinely just break down and go, yes, I did it, and this is why I did it, and just want to unburden themselves.
At the same time, it still shocks me. Like if that, I just think like I can't. So those people that go for 5-hour interviews, I realize, because I've watched, I guess in the movies especially, you just talked about, they feel so like they're unburdening, but it's almost like, because 5 hours is such a long time to be. But I can't imagine. How does a person go from holding that information to spilling that information, knowing they're gone, for their whole life is about to change? I just
I know what you're saying.
I'm saying I wouldn't talk. I did that, I wouldn't tell you.
I know what you're saying, but we have the advantage as investigators in that we've got resources, we've got a lot of information readily available. And so you're in there, and you might be trying to spin your story. We'd be going, all right, and it's. I'm not talking out of school here, because it's commonly known. Solicitors tell their clients, don't say anything. That's the best advice. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, because it's not the solicitor that's going to go to jail. And this is the point. It's sometimes tell the police what you know, and it will help you. But it's an interesting world.
Hang on, that sounds a bit sus, guys. He's telling us that we should be a little bit honest now. The lawyers that tell us don't telling me, Gary say maybe we should just tell them a little bit.
I'm just saying the lawyers are only there to give you advice. Yeah. You've got to make your own decision. Okay. So anyway, Dan.
Okay. I don't know about that, guys. Don't take that from me. I would be taking your lawyer's advice. Gary, tell me a little bit about your ability to tell when someone's lying. I imagine in your 34-year career as a police, being in the police, you've certainly mastered some tactics to work out when someone's lying.
Well,
would you say?
Look, you do, and I think the first thing it gives you in policing, understand that people do lie. Like there's a naive part of society out there going, they said he didn't do it, but he said he promised he didn't do it, and and some people just accept that. Well, he couldn't have done it because he said he didn't do it. As a police officer, probably in the world of criminal investigation, probably as many people that I speak to are telling the truth as are lying. So for someone lying, just because you look me in the eyes and go, Gary, I promise you I didn't do that, I'd be going, yeah, okay. But I wouldn't be thinking, oh, well, clearly he hasn't done it. I'd be looking for what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but
just tell us a couple.
Just a couple, just on the quiet.
Yeah, on the quiet.
How people react when they're being spoken to. I look at it. It's not evidence, but so it's if someone's sort of looking away when they're talking, or it's not evidence, but it just gives you a sort of indication and a couple of things that you would try to see if that's that is carried weight. I always say with policing, like detectives, because people often ask about intuition. I say it's important you use your intuition, and that does point you in a direction. But it's more important to make sure the facts support that intuition. So that might be, if I'm looking at you, Danny, I'm thinking, that something's not quite right there. Don't confess here with it.
I'm keeping it dark. Not guilty.
Yeah, that's it. If I was asking, I'm thinking, well, something's a little bit off there. I might dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, sure.
But you've got to make sure that you support that intuition with the facts.
Because not everyone, like if you talk about telltale signs, I don't know, I've often heard this psychology thing that people look to the left or to the right when they're. Is that true?
Look, I hear all that too.
Yeah, you hear all that.
That stuff, and I think there's some merit to it.
Yeah.
I don't know the skills I've got with it. I just know if you've been doing it every day, you start to pick up things. So if I had to articulate why I know that's not quite right, it's hard for me, but I can tell that he's holding back something or something's not there. But in saying that, I've had people that I've had in the interview room, and I would have bet my bottom dollar, even though I'm not a betting man, that person is guilty of it. But then when we've done the investigation, because part of the investigation is not just to prove someone's guilt, you've got to find out what's happened. It's searching for that truth. That they haven't done it, and you find the person that's done it, and you think, Jesus, I was wrong there. So that makes sure you checks and balances. The good detectives that train me, even when we've got someone that you think dead to rights, they always look at an alternate hypothesis. Like, okay, we think it's him, but how do we make sure it's not this other person? So.
Wow, that just so many things come up, so many questions. But it just reminds me, like sometimes I watch some television shows, and there's actually a show about people that were wrongly convicted and spending. Yeah, that's people spend the rest of their life in jail, not even guilty.
I see that, Danny.
It's scary, isn't it?
It is scary, and I think I'm speaking for the majority of the police here, because people think, corrupt police we don't care, we just want to throw someone away. The police I work with, or the police I respected working with, they would be mortified if we put an innocent person away. Like it is something that wouldn't sit well, and it's just something that you wouldn't do. Like it's so. I see that it happens. It happens. You hear stories in America and stories here. I can't even imagine what a person's going through if you were sitting in jail and convicted of a crime. And I've changed. Sounds a little bit cynical, or maybe it's just a sour grapes of what happened to me at court. I've changed my views a little bit on court. I think courts are as good as the information that's provided to them, if that makes sense. They're not criticising the individual jury or the judge or the magistrate, but what information is actually provided to them determines how good the courts are.
This whole thing reminds me of, say, addiction recovery as well. Like, you can quite tell who is going to make it. For example, people coming to a treatment center, or they're referred from the courts to go to rehab, and often you can never tell who's going to make it, because if you could, like, addiction is probably one of the biggest trouble things in the world, isn't it? Like, everyone,
100%.
Yeah, and you can never tell, but I feel like there definitely is some telltale signs. And amazingly enough, some of those signs would be like, for example, if someone gets 30, 60 days clean and abstinent, and they start talking about, oh, life is so good, I found a God, I'm doing all this, I'm involved in all this, I'm so honest now, my life's so good. That person's usually fucked. They're probably never going to make it.
Yeah, look, and that's your experience.
It's my experience.
And instinct from it. But I liken it to, you see relationships that start. Oh, we're so in love. They better not edit this if I'm looking at you going, we're so in love. But that, like, over the top, and you look and you think they're going, that's relationships. They're trying to convince themselves as much as everyone else, and that relationship's not going to last. So I see what you're talking about with beating the addiction. I can imagine someone spread, oh, no, it's easy. But I think the true, and this is me outside my lane, outside my area of expertise, but just my take on it, is the ones that can stay away from the drug or the addiction when things aren't going well for them. Like, it's easy if it's going well, but life is about setbacks, and we'll all get a kick in the guts at some stage or another setback. And it's how you deal with it then and don't fall back into our old habits.
Yeah, so you know what, like, kind of contrary to what you just said, with addiction, we will use during the good times and the bad times. Like, it's not even if things are going good. Well, that makes a lot of sense by what you said, because when things are going good, often people do pick up.
Okay, well, you just opened my mind up to that, and I could imagine. Yeah, shit, life is
There's
good.
never.
I'll start using
celebrate.
It again.
I'll celebrate with a fucking. So that monkey on the back, just going. You can just have one more. And I just want to add to that, like, actually, the person I feel like who's got the best chance, and I wonder if you can relate to this, is the person who's actually just fighting it. Like, but he's really honest. He's going, oh, this is fucked. I'm not doing that. This is shit. To the person that's complaining transparently, but he's honest. He's not saying, oh, it's okay. It's the person that's going, oh, this is shit. I'm struggling. He's the person more likely to make it.
I think so, because there's some more honesty there. And I would imagine, like, for an addiction, that you've got to decide you want to break that addiction. Like, I would imagine there's a lot of people around you going, come on, Danny, you can kick it, you can do this and do that, which is all good and supportive. But the very heart of it, I would imagine it's not until Danny says to Danny, I'm out of here. True. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, it's cool that we can tie that back in with you, Gary. Imagine there's been times when you've had maybe a killer in front of you, a criminal in front of you. You've done your interviews. You feel in your heart that he's guilty of some horrible crime, and he walks out the door because you can't pin him, or you can't get the conviction.
Or the evidence.
Yeah, you can't get the truth out of him. Yeah. How does that feel to let some especially if it's some heinous crime? How does it feel to let someone go like that?
And again, because the majority of my career, 25 years, I was investigating murder, so that doesn't get any more serious than that. Yeah. So there are people I know that have literally got away with murder, and it's frustrating, but I can live with it. I'm only talking from a personal point of view. I can live with it and when I say it's a team sport, homicide investigation. Yeah, I can live with it if we've done everything humanly possible to find that person. Yeah. So I can sit with it. I'll be pissed off about it. I don't like it, but I'll accept it and move on and accept. Wow. Okay, well that's the world. But as long as you've done everything, and I don't mean when saying done everything, because I had a reputation for hanging on the jobs for a very long time. Yeah, sure. And doing everything, like thinking outside the box, going that little bit harder. Like, there's some homicides that we call, and I talk like I'm still a homicide detective. I'm just can't let old habits die there. That's my addiction. How do I break it? like the smoking gun situation. It's like tracking an elephant through the snow. They're not hard to solve. They're the easy ones. It's the ones, the difficult ones that you really got to hang in there, and it might be years, and then you get a breakthrough, a snippet, and you go, yes, we're on track now.
That must be that's cold case. Yeah, that must be so satisfying.
They're great, and even you can have that condensed version in homicide too, where it might only be a 3-month investigation, but you're scrambling to start with, and then all of a sudden some small piece of information comes in. But the other thing with homicide, Danny, and this is where when I talk homicide, and I think everyone's got to acknowledge the pain and the suffering it causes, not obviously the victim of it, but the family and friends. It impacts on so many people. And, that's what drove me with homicide investigation is coming in contact with the families. And just the way they deal with the grief is just inspirational and driven, committed. They're not forgetting their loved ones. They're fighting for justice, and they're the ones that really inspire me. And I think in the cops, if you're going to put your hand up and call yourself a homicide detective, you've got to do justice to those families and work as hard. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You've got to work round the clock, and when it's on, and you make sacrifices in your personal life to make sure the job's done properly.
Do you know, I often talk about the families of addiction, of addicts being the true victims too. You know, we talk about addiction on the victim, but mate, even at my lowest of low, being homeless, living under the bridge in Woolloomooloo, I always had a chance I was going to get on and get stoned in the next hour, you know. But what about my mum, my dad, my family at home, wondering, am I alive? Am I in the gutter? Am I dead? Like, they're the true victims for me, you know?
Shit there. I've seen drugs, whether it was a homicide investigation or a different stage in my career or even my own family, not knowing where a loved one is and knowing that they're using and risk-taking and everything else and vulnerable. It breaks your heart, and it's hard to live with. And I would always watch families too, and I felt so sorry for them. Like that could be, sometimes kids get off to a bad start, but I've seen other people go down the track when they've got a supportive family, and the parents are blaming themselves, going, "What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong?" And then they've got to do the tough love. No, you can't come back and live here anymore. We've given you too many chances, and you've knocked off all that stuff. You've raided our accounts. Blah blah blah.
So difficult.
It's hard, isn't it?
My mum was interviewed by SBS, and mate, and I'd never seen her, like, even though I was about 10 years clean at the time or more, but I'd never seen her get asked. And one of the things she said, and how sad is this? She said there was times that she wished. She didn't say she wished I was dead, but she said she wished that I wasn't here because of all the pain that she thought I was going through. She said, at times I wish that, he wasn't even here. Like, what a horrible thing. And my mum was my biggest supporter. Like, she loved me so much. She went through so much grief, Like, imagine that.
I understand that thought.
I get it too.
Thought process. And I've had, family members without identifying, how close or that worried that when someone's out, are they going to cause harm to someone? Yeah, it almost gets to the point where, look, if he kills himself, well, we'll live with that. We've tried to help, but I don't know how we'd live if he harmed someone else. Like, it's how you get that across. I suppose when you're addicted, you're not thinking clearly like that, but it's you sitting back and reflecting. It must be digging up some emotions.
I worked in drug and alcohol rehabilitation at a service that we took high-risk offenders straight out of prison, right? And in that time, in the 10 years that I worked there, I took probably thousands of phone calls from family members begging for help. And one of the things I loved about my job is I worked really autonomous. I would just give that family member time. I'd answer questions. I'd refer them on. But I just know the suffering that those family members go. And I guess you and I have got similar, stories of that stuff.
And if you can help in just that little way and, understand what they're going through, I think that carries a lot. And, if I swing it back to policing, but I think it carries for everything in life. Yeah, that empathy. If you've got empathy and understand what people are going through, it can point you in a good direction.
And I think it can also help you build a great career, Gary. I feel like I'm moving towards the right direction, especially being here with you. And on that note, like you've got quite you've had an amazing career. Like you've achieved so much. I imagine people have lots of fascinating questions. They have a fascination. To you, what's one of the things people want to know from you?
People want to understand homicide investigations and or what are my thoughts on this or that case? What case would I like to investigate? And, there's so many things. I get asked the high-profile cases that I've been on. I get asked about that. Obviously, the William Tyrrell one, I can't skirt from that because that's even though I was known for other investigations, that sort of defined me because of the way that it brought them into my career. So I get asked a lot of questions like that. And, one particular difficult one is, do you think William's still alive? Now, I've been off the investigation for 3 years or a bit over 3 years now. And I led it for 4 years. I took it over 5 months after William disappeared. When I was asked those questions, when I was leading the investigation, I said, and if it was in the media or to whoever, the most honest answer I can give to that is what I've told the families, William's family, the foster family and biological family, is that I think it's unlikely that he's still alive. So not offering false hope and just saying, in my experience, it would be unlikely if he was found alive. Having said that, we don't know what's happened to William. It's still a matter before the coroner, and hopefully the coroner will come back sooner rather than later and clear the air on a few things.
It was going to be my next question, mate. Do you think William's still alive? And of course, hope is a big thing, isn't it? Like, mate, stranger things have happened, haven't they?
They're strange things, very rare. And the thing is with William as a 3-year-old, there's not a lot of kids that disappear at that age. And
thank God.
I've been asked about this, and this is just me, putting speculation, I suppose. But you think when you're looking after a 3-year-old kid, you can't turn your back on them because they can get they're mobile, they can get around, and they can get into trouble quickly. So I think, that's why it's so rare, children of William's age disappearing, because everyone's sort of got an eye out for them. And that's why it's sort of, I think, resonated with, Australian society. Like everyone knows the little boy in the Spider-Man suit. And I think because we can all relate to that, we can relate to a child playing at the grandparents' place in a rural area. You would think the child's safe, and then he just disappeared, and there's still no answers.
Wow, it's so scary to hear, especially because I've got that 5-year-old daughter, and the panic that comes about just for losing sight for just a second.
I think it has sent chills through us all. Yeah. That you're looking at kids. I can be walking down the street and see a child that I can't work out who's supervising the child or who's looking after the child. And it makes me look around to make sure that the child's okay. So I think that's why it's touched so many people. The Williams matter.
This is that thing I was talking about. So even just as I'm starting to talk about it, I almost feel like quite sensitive just around like some of that stuff. Like when I think about my daughter, and I just think I can't imagine how you would have done in some of those interviews and worked with those family members. I understand someone needs to do it. Thank God we've had you and all the other amazing officers and people, counsellors out there that do deal with that grief. But it's something I really avoid usually, going into those conversations.
It's confronting. I think, and I can only speak for myself here, I get conditioned to it.
Yeah.
I also knew that I felt like I had the experience and I still had the energy and passion that I felt like I was the right person for the job.
Good,
I said to the families, if I thought there was someone that could do this investigation better than I can, I'd readily step aside. And I mean that. You don't want to be leading an investigation like that unless you believe you're ready for it.
Gary, you were convicted and found guilty of
I knew you'd bring that up, Danny. Jesus Christ.
Mate, you were convicted and found guilty for some illegal recordings. Is that right? I had to bring it up, Gary.
No.
So you got a criminal record, first of all? Is that right?
Yes.
No wonder you and I get on so Well, Gary,
I don't know how much street cred my criminal record carries, but I'll explain what it is, because I'm in saying I'm not embarrassed by it. Let me just put up front, then we can have a laugh about things. Is that it frustrates me that I was taken off the William Tyrrell investigation. I lost my career over this, and I still maintain that what I did, I had a justifiable right to do it. I accept the decisions of the court, even though I don't like it, and I was convicted at the local court. I appealed to the district court, and I was convicted. Smarter people than me think I was justified in recording the conversations the way I did. So basically, this heinous crime that I've committed, I was speaking to someone in regards to the William Tyrrell matter. There was listening devices approved by Supreme Court judges in the premises at the time, but they weren't always working. I was having a one-on-one conversation with the person, and I wanted to protect under the Listening Devices Act section, I forget the exact section 7 or whatever, if you reasonable cause to protect your lawful interests. I was having a fairly confrontational conversation with this person, and if allegations were made, I record the conversations to protect myself if allegations were made against me. Said and done. Didn't hide the fact from it that I had recorded the conversations. All the people I was working with on the strike force knew I recorded the conversations. Then sort of 12 months later, down the track, it becomes this big issue, and certain allegations stemming from a HR issue, of all things, were made, and that was my career taken away. The weekend, this will put it in perspective, the weekend before, it was Tuesday when Internal Affairs or Professional Standards turned up. I had been flown up to Tamworth because 2 police officers had been shot. I was the on-call homicide inspector, so I went up to oversee that critical incident investigation. I then came back to Sydney, and there was a murder up in Newcastle. I went up to Newcastle on the Monday and oversaw that investigation. So I was living the life of a homicide detective. That was my norm. Yeah. Then on Tuesday, I was told that at the end of a shift, you wanted upstairs and taken up there, and search warrants were executed on me. I had my gun taken off me, my car taken off me, and that was the last day of active policing I had. Oh my God! So, you didn't even see it coming? No, not at all. And when it was put to me, I half laughed and thought, you can't be serious. Like, you cannot be serious. And I was meant to go for a very important meeting on the William Tyrrell matter the next day, on the Wednesday, and I couldn't go. I couldn't brief anyone on it. I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone in the police about the William Tyrrell matter from there. So, Danny, I say this, and I keep saying I've got over it. You can see I tense up when I just talk about it. Sure. I'm just saying this in that, okay, if police, for whatever reason, they wanted to bring me down, fine. But should not the priority be the William Tyrrell investigation? This internal bickering and whatnot. There was no need to just take me off and protect the integrity of the investigation. Everyone knew I'd record that conversation. There was no issue with it. I wasn't using it for anything sinister. I was doing police work. We had listening devices in the place. But what they did, not letting me do a handover, that's what frustrates me. And I feel sorry. I feel sorry for William's parents, biological parents and foster parents, as the public are well aware of now, that they had to see this internal turmoil within the police, myself included. Sure. So I'm not stepping away from that. I was one of the combatants fighting. But the focus should be on finding out what's happened to William Tyrrell. And now it's just dragged on for all these years, and everyone's so confused. So that was, to put it in words, without going specific. So I talk openly about this because I am not embarrassed by what I did. Yeah. I've said, we talked about don't be interviewed by police. I was gonna, I know that is what everyone tells you, and I've gone, no, I will. So you spoke up. I spoke up and went, here, you ask me any questions. What if you didn't? Well, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be here. Maybe I'd still be at the murder scene now. I don't know, but it felt the right thing to do. Of course. Like I think sometimes a principle comes into it, and I felt that I was having a job done on me, and it's not in my nature to run away from something. And I've gone, here I am. This is what I've done. And the courts ruled against me. They can live with that. How they came about, how they came by those decisions. But when it's all said and done, it's happened, and I liken it to if something you're passionate about, and that was your identity, and it was taken away from you. I talk, let's say, a professional sportsman, a rugby league player, and then you just tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you're never playing rugby league again." Well, that's how that's how I felt. So
just overnight, just like that.
Overnight, and I stayed in the police for another 3 months, and senior police said, "Oh, you'll go off sick," and I hadn't had a sick day in my whole career, so I stayed. I said, "I'm not going off sick," and then I sat in the room for 3 months and not allowed to do any police work, and then it just got to the ridiculous stage, and then I got charged after being told by an assistant commissioner and a deputy commissioner I wouldn't be charged, and I was charged. So.
Jeez, man, you really got shafted. It sounds like it.
And Danny, I'll put on record. This is my version of it.
Sure, of course.
But I stand by. Other people might be going blah blah blah.
Sure.
I say bring it on. I'm telling you what I've done. You explain from your point of view.
Yeah. I'd love to hear any questions or comments about that, because, like, one of the next thing I want to ask you is, do you feel like people supported your decision to do that? Because I certainly do. So against your best advice you said earlier, you actually did speak. Your advice was you spoke up to defend yourself because you felt it would help you, but it might have gone against you.
And I think I think that part of the speaking up, like, I could have played the legal game and been very, I'm not making any comment here and that, but this is a world that I operated on. I wasn't ashamed of what I did, and I thought it's appropriate. Look, let's lay it all. This is what I've done. I was fined $10,000, which I'm not a rich person, and it hurt. But when it's all, I suppose, because what I've seen in the cops, and this is where it embarrasses me even whinging about what's happened to me. When you see what's happened to William's family and so many other families, so what's happened to me sort of pales into insignificance. And I did get a lot of support from the public, and that was truly unexpected. I wasn't sure what the public would react, but when I went to court, and that was embarrassing, like walking up the steps of down in Centre Court. Like, normally I'm bringing someone there. I might be bringing you. But walking in there, and I had cameras following me from Central Railway Station all the way down to the courts, and it was humiliating. But when I got there was a group of people there chanting and supporting me. And I get goosebumps thinking about that, because
me too.
And it meant a lot. And they were people that were families of the victims that I'd worked for. So it's sort of it balanced out. And it's funny how life turns out. Like, I'm enjoying my life now. I'm just sad that the impact it's had on the William Tyrrell matter, and not just the William Tyrrell matter. I had a couple of other cases that I was working on. The Bowraville murders, that's still an unsolved situation. Right? 3 Aboriginal children murdered up at Bowraville. Colleen Walker, Evelyn Greenup and Clinton Speedy was taken off that, and quite a few others. So, but shit happens. And on the scale of things, it's minuscule what's happened to me.
Yeah, Gary, I automatically look at the positives. I look at where you are today, and I think a lot of this stuff, and I'm always optimistic around this, and I'm sure you identify this stuff too, but like, you wouldn't be here, I would be right here right now talking with you if it wasn't for this. And I can see, like, maybe getting out, maybe you're exactly where you're meant to be, and all of that stuff is just, by the grace of God.
It's funny you say that, Danny, but I look at that, and I speak to a lot of people, and maybe this is the path my life was meant to follow, and I feel I feel like I still have the passion to do stuff, and I feel like chatting with you and that type of thing is good, and I feel like I can more difference. Like I'm fascinated by what goes on in corrective services, and learning from people. When I left the cops, or when it all blew up,
you departed.
I departed. That's right.
I know in the bio it says you retired. Is that formally you went down?
I retired. I retired. Like I wasn't
after you got charged.
Wasn't sacked, and I actually put in my papers and said I'm retiring, and that's when I met with a deputy commissioner and assistant commissioner, and they told me you won't be charged, and I said I would be a positive advocate for the cops and blah blah blah, and then 3 or 4 weeks later I get my barrister gets contacted saying he better hand himself in. So
it's funny you say that because they said that to me once too. I wouldn't be charged if I just told them where those watches and the car come from. If I just told them, I wouldn't be charged. And I told them, Gary, and they're fucking.
Geez, you can't. Who can you trust if you can't trust the police? Like look. So when it happened, it was disappointing. But that's what I wanted to say. So after I left the police, I was kicking stones for a while. Like I was. In a dark place, as you would in those circumstances. But I sort of dug myself out of that. But met with a person by the name of Bernie Matthews, and you would have heard of
I've seen the story,
just a hard man, longest serving prisoner in Katingal, maximum security, maximum security, escaped from Long Bay. Not that, you escaped from Silverwater, so you're in that. So
definitely.
You would have known. But a real hard man. But he was also a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
And he was an award-winning journalist, and I got to speak to him, and we developed a funny relationship. Like it was a really close relationship, and I'd go see him. He sadly passed away, and he was talking about the times up in Grafton when Grafton prison, and it's subject to an inquiry, so it's not talking out of school, but where prisoners were the worst of the worst went there, the intractables, and they were given the welcome, which was a flogging as they came in and treated rough. And he was saying what that turned people into. It turned people into animals. And they came out, and he listed the class of 77 or whatever, all the people he served with. And it was a heavy crew that had committed some horrendous crimes. And we got to talking about that, and it made me start to think about what goes on in prisons. And I'm happy to say that I think that this is, prisons are starting to realise the importance of, letting people, when people come out, hopefully they're better people than when they went in. So it sort of opened my eyes to a lot of things, restorative justice, different ways of approaching things. And I'm in a happy space there. I feel like I can make a difference with fighting crime by doing it a little bit differently. And it surprised me how many people were working hard. And you're doing your little contribution here, helping people from breaking away from their habits. All these people are working hard, not getting the kudos that we would get as detectives, or the person identified with the investigation. So, I found some passion since I've left the police.
Do you know what absolutely blows me away? I've been sharing my stories, and I've actually been promoting this story, and the recent chat that I had with the retired police officers, and what really spins me out, and like this is a big credit to you, Gary. I haven't seen one single negative comment. I've got 120,000 followers on Facebook. I haven't seen one single negative comment, and I just love that. So it goes to show a lot. Like even like, and I know this for a fact, like Crims that I know. Even have respect for you for what you've done and what you're doing today, especially. You're giving people a voice, which is something I love to think I'm doing too. But that must feel good.
It does feel good. And look, I know it's a strange sort of relationship I have.
It is, yes.
Ex-cop and speaking to former criminals. But I think if we cut it all down, and I think it's a good lesson in life, isn't it? That opposites can actually, if you put us in a room long enough together, you can work out that there's a lot of similarities. And I do like that part of it. I like that part of it, that we can break the barriers down. And also, the one person that helped me a great deal when I left too was Ken Marslew. From Enough is Enough. Now, Ken's story, horrendous story. His son Michael was murdered in an armed robbery, working at Pizza Hut, and he was shot with a shotgun. Just a sad story. Ken Marslew as you would imagine, was angry about that, and he said that he wanted revenge for it, understandably, as I would, as I think any person would. And he realised how much that was destroying him. So he started to work for set up a situation. Enough is enough, and helping prisoners in prison so they can do something when they're released, do something positive and all that. He's basically dedicated his life to it. I met with him after we left the police, and we'd sort of circled each other when I knew who he was, he knew who I was, and we met. And I said, "Look, I'm really sort of confused what my role is these days, what I should do, and I feel like, why am I doing stuff in the media or talking all that?" And he said, "You've got a platform, Gary, and you've got a message, and because you've got the experience, that message carries something." And what that helped me a great deal, because I just wanted to, when it all blew up, I just wanted to pull away. I just wanted to bury my head and pretend, keep a low profile. He said, "You've got a responsibility to get out there and talk about it, and because you are an ex-cop, you can, if you say something, you're not looked at as a bleeding heart that's just taking a soft line on crime." And so it carries some weight. So that makes
for sure. That just reminds me of a couple of my good mates, Jeffrey Morgan, Russell Manson, TikTok Gary, three men that I'm connected with pretty much on a daily basis, who have found their voice. They've come out of that life. They've found a voice. But I mean, the opposite life to you, but the criminal life. They've got themselves on track, and myself, and started sharing our messages of recovery. And one of the things that I just want to give a big shout out to all the thousands of people I know who are in recovery, absolutely killing it, living their best lives, just like I am, but haven't found a voice, or they don't want to share their messages. I just love that I do have that ability to do it. So big shout out. I literally know, I just want to let everyone know, like, we are everywhere. People in recovery living their dream, basically walking amongst you everywhere, who have completely changed their lives. And I don't think community realizes how many people are out there in recovery, living their best lives today too, mate.
And there's so many impressive stories. I won't, for the sake of their own privacy, but they're people I've interviewed on podcast. World champions, committed world champions. Rock stars, have been through those addictions and turn their life around, and it just blows me away. And I think what's interesting with people like that, like how driven you have to be to get to a standard where you're a world champion or you're award-winning musician, and they still, the drugs still got hold of them. Like no one's immune to it, and I can imagine their attitude would be, but that's the average person. I sit up here, I can control stuff. It won't get hold of me, but it does. And then they acknowledge it and turn their life around. And it's so cool. Addiction
does not discriminate, mate.
Yeah.
Gary, is there anything you changed looking back? I know this is a pretty heavy question, but like looking back on your choices you made to make that recording and even just losing your career and where you are now, is there anything you would change looking back on that, mate?
Look, I do get asked that question a bit, and people might say I'm either stubborn or stupid or a combination of both. I wish I didn't record the conversations because it wouldn't have blown up. But given the same set of circumstances, would I record those conversations? Shit, yeah. To me, I still maintain that I was justified in what I did. The courts have ruled against me, and I keep saying that. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I say I don't trust the courts when I've been putting people before the courts the whole time. My regret, Danny, is that, and people, it comes as a surprise when I say this, that if I knew my career was going to be cut off then, and part of my, the detractors say I would always be going too hard. If I knew my career was going to be cut off at that point, I would have gone harder. I would have gone harder. And
good to hear.
That's my regret. I make no apologies. I'm investigating people being murdered. I will go hard. I play within the rules, but I'm passionate about it. And so that's my regret. And if people want to say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry," no, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry for the impact it had on the William Tyrrell investigation, because it was just the chaos that has flown from there. But you've got to be true to yourself too, I think. And I know the system well enough. If I showed contrition, like if I said, "Oh, look, I've been under a lot of stress. I've been working really hard, and this has happened. There's a lot of pressure running this job. They would have broken me, and then they would have let me alone. I could have stayed in the police, and I probably wouldn't have even been charged. Or if I stood on the steps of the court and said, well, let this be a lesson to everyone that no one's above the law. Maybe I wouldn't have got the $10,000 fine and the conviction recorded against my name. Now, I look at these situations, but that's not me. And I can't do it. And so I'm comfortable where I am now because I've lived my life the way I should live my life, like the person I am, if that makes sense.
It does. It's kind of goes both ways because in a way you're saying you can hold your head high for making those decisions, but at the same time you regret.
Yeah.
And I love that because for some reason I'm thinking you wouldn't regret. Like I understand a bit the impacts it had on families, but like I look at you now and I look at I think you've built this incredible life afterwards. Like ICAS Killers podcast is absolutely incredible. So many people. Like I think there's 150,000 downloads a week or something. Like, I can't get my head around how you can't. Well, I'm not saying you don't see how valuable that is, but you still wish it didn't happen. Like, I think you get the best life now, mate.
I just, and that's why I can't sit here and whinge. No, but it's, and I think, and I don't by any means. Put myself in the same category as you have in the way that you've turned your life around. Oh. But it is about setbacks, isn't it? And how you respond to those setbacks. And a good mate of mine said to me, and a lot of the smarter people than me came and gave me advice, which was appreciated. And people might say, oh, he's a hothead or whatever. And people would say, just your instinct is fight, just take a step back. And I'm glad I did this. And I'm not out spraying the police or, I'm just saying these are the facts, blah, blah, blah. But said, Gary, if you want to make a career, and I was just starting working in the media and writing and doing things, if you whinge, it'll feel good once. And people will listen once, and then they'll get sick of it. And that was really good advice. And so I just embrace it and go, it's opened up so many opportunities for me. And but I say I miss being a homicide detective, but I'm embracing my new life. And Danny, I've been challenged.
I guess you're right, eh? Like there probably could be no bigger job than being a homicide. I guess you're right. Like I forget that stuff. Like that's
that was your sense of self-worth. Even if I didn't think I was a good person, I personally thought I was a good person. At least I'm doing some good what I'm doing at work. When that's taken away, you're sort of going, well, who am I?
Mate, I really, you're right. You just make me realize I miss that side. Like that is such it's a 1 in a billion, or I don't know, chance to be that person investigating some of the heaviest crimes out there.
And when you get to that stage in your career, if there's a bad one, you're going to be called for that. And it's we talk about drugs. It's intoxicating. You do get drawn into it, but you've got that experience. And I learnt from some really good people, very fortunate. But every day I went to homicide, every day I turned up at work, I'd learn something more. Like the experience. Good. You just can't, you learn each time you go to a different job.
Mate, all right. Gary, a big question. I'm sure people would love to know this one. What do you think happened to William?
Okay.
Can you share your
look?
Tell us what happened.
I can't, Danny. Only in that it's I've got thoughts. Of possibilities. It's a matter before the coroner. We've got to put our faith in the coroner. I think it's dragging on for a long time, and I think there might be a point in time when I offer an opinion, but it won't be why the investigation's still running. I just think we should be judged, and when I say we, I'm still talking like I'm a cop, but we should be judged on how we respond to a job like that. If we can't bring the A game for an investigation of that nature, we should be judged. And if we've made mistakes, we should learn from those mistakes. And that's what I sincerely hopes happen. And I don't like the way it's been played out in social media. And, when senior police are coming out saying we've got one suspect and then the suspect has been not named but readily identified, I really thought that was poor form, and I've made my comments publicly on that, and I stand by those comments.
So you haven't answered the question, which is fine. Like you can't. It sounds like you can't. But can you at least tell us? Do you think you know what happened?
I can't be certain. I put it on this. Have case theories, and they're theories. They're called theories because you can't say with certainty. I can't say with certainty. I know, but I've got views on it, but I just don't want to say it.
I understand you don't want to. I understand you don't want to say you can't because you don't want to affect it. But I just wonder, so you don't, so you can't. Inside of you feel like you know what happened.
If and I'm saying I don't. If I knew 100% this person has done it, I'd say I'd know who's done it. I can't say that. Sure. So
yeah, cool. Sorry, Gary. Just a couple more questions, mate. Tell us if you don't mind before we wrap it up. I know you've used some creative ways to catch a killer. Basically, I know you planted the Spider-Man outfit, which was really cool the way you guys did that, and you watched old mate. But yeah, can you tell us about some of the creative ways you've used your imagination to catch a killer?
It's an interesting point that you bring up, Danny, in that I talked about the smoking gun type murders that are very easy to solve. I won't give specifics because I like to hang on to a little bit of methodology.
Sure.
But thinking outside the square. And I've done some, I'll tell you some funny ones where I come up with elaborate plans. Again, I'm not giving you specific details. Sure, but if I wanted to trap you, I've got this elaborate plan. I'm going to do this and do that and blah, blah, blah. And I know it's going to work. But then sometimes I've done it with people that just don't realise how good the plan is. The plan is, we'll say this and that's going to happen and this is going to happen. And it's all goes perfectly, and then I sit down and speak with you, and you don't even get what we're trying to do. You don't fully understand the brilliance of it.
Yeah,
that makes sense. But with the difficult investigations, I'll give you a sense of how I was taught to run investigations and how I like to think I ran the investigations when I was leading the homicide investigations. If we hit a crossroad and we can't get through, we'll sit around with a group of people and have a think tank. And I basically, and as I became more confident as a leader or whatever, I'd say throw out all the ideas, no matter how ridiculous it is. Let's hear the ideas, and then we'll brainstorm it and see whether it's worth pursuing. So you've got to be creative when you're investigating homicides. And
sure.
I know there's a concern of police, and quite rightly so, about police methodology being revealed. But there's so many crime shows on there, like everyone thinks they know, the police can do this or the police can do that.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny years ago where the suspects or the crooks thought we had capabilities that we didn't have. We've got the capabilities now.
They thought, paranoia. We did. We thought you listened to everything.
You thought we would have, following someone 24/7 and we'd have helicopters and this and that and years ago. I don't even know what they got now. But what I do know of police, they're always improving, and you've got some very smart, good operators in the police, so they're always trying to be one step ahead. But then the crooks will get one step, and then the cops will overlap them. The since I've been out of the police, and this made me want to be back in the police, that anonymous thing, with the telephones, where that caught a lot of people. Like I know there's matters before the court, but when that came up, I thought, geez, that was creative.
What was that?
That was where law enforcement over in America set up you got chat forms on phones. And it was an encrypted system.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All the crooks thought, okay, I give it to you. You pass it on. This is safe. The cops can't listen to it. But the cops actually set
it up.
Wow. Now I thought, that was creative, and that was when it came out. I thought that's a pretty simple plan. Why didn't anyone else think of it before? But it was such a good plan. So,
mate, it reminds me. I worked in rehab for 10 years, and it was there was a lot of freedom there. I used to live downstairs, and there's 7 men, right?
Yep.
And there's girls around everywhere, right? Whatever. I mean, but I would have a feeling that someone's sneaking out at night time, right? And I would always put it to them. I'd put it to them, and in some ways, a little bit of a fucking detective work, and I'd put it to them, and I reckon I could read their body language from. They would always deny it. You, of course, keep denying it, guys, of course. But anyway, then I would set up little traps for myself to like I'd either put something in place on the front door because I wouldn't hear them go out the front door, but I'd put something in place on the front door and on the back gate just to know that if they have gone, and I'll get up in the morning, I'll check and I'll see someone's gone out there, right? But do you know what? I don't think I ever. Well, if I did bring it to their attention, I never brought it to the attention. It was just for my own satisfaction to know. But I'm talking about a guy getting out there and hooking up a chick or whatever he was doing.
And I think that's and we've talked about this not
I
today,
did that, guys.
But how people are interested in crime. And you're just that's an exciting story. I like that. That's part of, and that's the joy that I would get being a detective. You're doing things like that. You think, how can we outsmart this person?
Yeah, it's cool. And then you know what would happen, Gary? After they leave, I would always ask them. I'd say, listen, you're sweet now, because I always stay in contact with a lot of my ex-clients. And I'm good mates with a lot of them. And I'd say, come on, just tell me. And then they'll tell me the truth. And I said, I fucking knew it. And I told you. And they, it's a cool little process.
How lucky are they to have someone like you helping with them on that? Like, I think that's so cool. And I see a lot of people that have been through the path you've done and putting back into it. And that has to carry a lot of weight. Like, if I went in there as a straighty 180 and said, I don't do this, don't do that, well, piss off. You don't know what the drive is.
Probably. Oh, look, maybe you
maybe because of
your
work.
connection. Yeah.
But if someone that's gone down that path, walk those footsteps, they I'm sure you help more people than you realise.
Just on that, I want to add something to that. Like, one of those things that could be sneaking out for could be to use drugs, right? Now that's incredible. That's a big no while in rehab. Okay. Now, the thing is, what if they did get caught? And I guess this could go back to what you do too, but what if they did get caught? We kick them out, you're gone, they end up dying could be one thing. They never get back, they continue using. Or what if that was their last one? Maybe they thought, fuck, that was too close. I got away with it, and they never used again, So that happens. It definitely happens.
Oh, 100%. A story that Bernie told me. He was looking after a halfway house getting out of prison, and there was a girl there that was he knew she was going to get back on the gear, and he stopped her. And I just remember the story. How it finished was what the interesting part, that he said, I'm taking you down. It was somewhere at Wagga. They got her into a home down there to detox. And he said, we're driving now. You get in the car. And she said, I'm going to be sick. If you throw up in the car, I'm going to make you clean it up. We're not stopping. You're not eating. We're going straight to there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And he said, I intimidated her, I harassed her, I virtually abducted her and took her down there. Okay, he's done that. He was telling me 10 years later or something, he's at a supermarket and someone was serving in the supermarket. And I think it came out that, are you Bernie? Yep. And it was the girl. And she said, I hated you for a long time, but you saved my life.
Oh, wow.
Like little stories like that. That has to.
That's illegal to do that, isn't it? But how many families out there have even asked me, Danny, is there a way we can just lock them up? And you can't, guys. By the way, you can't. What Bernie did there, she's blessed that it happened, but no, it's not legal, guys. We can't just lock them in a room. But not only that. 99.999% of the time, even if you did lock them in the room, because I was locked up in Darcy 1, like, it did not help. Like, the minute I get out, I used,
Didn't you, I was looking at notes before I did the interview. Didn't you go in and out? How many times did you go to the room?
Yeah, mate, 49 times, Gary. I was known on a first name basis at Herbert Street Clinic, Gorman House, Basement 82, Wisteria Lodge, like, I'd been in and out.
And they didn't give up on you, and look, you came through.
Yeah, well, look, that last time around, mate, I made a just I made a different decision. I didn't pick up the next drug one day at a time, on foot in front of the other. It's been about 13 years, 6 months and 20 days, mate, since I've had a mind or mood-altering substance, mate. About 120,000 hours of lived experience living life on life's terms, buddy. Thanks for bringing that up. Gary, last thing I want to ask you, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? Like, I know you've just finished up your live show traveling around Australia, was it? You had crims, or you had people asking you the questions?
So I've done the podcast. So I've done 2 books, I Catch Killers.
Of course,
Badness.
Badness.
Yeah. After I finished I Catch Killers, I did it, wrote it with a person by the name of Dan Box, who's a good crime journalist. A lot of respect for him. We wrote that. And that, people are interested in it. We did a second one, Badness, and that's been well received too. And that was sort of talking about, why people do the wrong thing and that. So just taking a different tact on it. So that took up a bit of time. I'm doing the podcast, the I Catch Killers podcast, which is, as you know,
weekly. Is it?
Yeah, weekly. Yeah. So we have a guest each week. So there's a fair bit that goes in there. Stuff with 60 Minutes and Under Investigation.
Yes,
I do stories with them that is of interest. And the tour you're talking about, and this is a funny story. This is where you really go into, or take me out of my comfort zone. So we're approached about doing because of the interest in I Catch Killers, would you like to do a live tour? Yeah. And I've sort of laughed and said, no. Not interested. On stage and Enmore Theatre and the travel around the Melbourne, Brisbane, South Australia. Nah. And then I've got a good friend. I mentioned him, Rob Carlton. He was one that gave me some advice. And he's an actor, a professional actor, very talented person, great mate. And they said, well, you can do it with Rob. And I've gone, okay, well, that's... And Rob and I sat down and we thought, how would we do this and that? I would have thought a live show, and I think most people thought a live show would be me sitting down having a conversation, I Catch Killers live show, and Rob, because he is an actor and writer and all sorts of things, been in it his whole life, said, no, Gary, this is a theatre. We're going to take the audience on a journey. I'm going, oh, this is getting a bit scary.
He was in the audience.
And he had... So we had music, and I had scripts that I had to learn. It had to fit in with it. I was really proud of what we did because I didn't want it to glorify crime, and it was a lot of fun, Danny. But I can honestly say, out of all I've done in life, I've never been so nervous as the night Enmore Theatre, because the COVID shut it down a little bit, and then there was a window of opportunity, and at 2 weeks' notice, you're on sold out.
How many people?
Whatever, Enmore Theatre, 1,400 or so people.
Holy shit, I thought you were going to say 300,
10
would
have been intimidating.
Yeah, right.
And I rock up there and I think, oh my God, what have I done? I've overstepped the mark here. Rob's in his room doing voice practice.
Yeah. And
I've gone, what are you doing? He said, just warming up. I had no idea what to do, so I shadow boxed because I was that nervous, walked out. But the show was well received, and it was a bit of fun. It was challenging myself doing something different. And with Rob on there, we were trying to take people in the world of crime, the highs, the lows, the funny times, the sad times, and all that. And it seemed to work. So we did a national tour, then a regional tour. So
was that Rob in the audience yelling out? I see that. I actually watched some stuff. Was he in the audience?
He's been known to jump in the audience.
Yeah.
No, he to set it up, like when we come out, it was taking people right into a crime scene. So it's me talking to the audience like I'm at the crime scene. Right. So a little bit of theatre that way. So it wasn't sort of explained. Yeah. And then Rob was playing a crook, a real crook that I arrested for a murder. And so we went through that. Talk about the Bowraville case and very strong terms there, and probably one of the I get a lot of emotional stuff through my career, but on that first night I was talking about the Bowraville family, and they had come down from Bowraville, some of the family, and they were in the audience, and we're talking, and Lulu, and who was Evelyn Greenup's auntie, has come out of the audience and given me a cuddle at the end of it, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the theatre. So it's interesting, and again, it's not sort of selling out; it's just doing something a little bit different. Sure. So Who would have thought I'd be doing that, Danny?
You know, I imagine that feeling being up on the stage, like in front of 1,400 people, and I've been really lucky to be in smaller. Yeah. That's almost like the feeling of using drugs, you know, that I chased for so long. That
it's a funny. I can imagine that would be a funny feeling. I don't by any means put myself up as an entertainer, but I wonder, these people that go out and perform it like that, how do they come down from that height? And the same with like professional sportsmen. You see these young blokes in rugby league or all codes getting into trouble with using drugs and all that. But absolutely. I think we've got to acknowledge. Can you imagine what it would be like as if you're in your 20s and you're treated like a god? You're walking out like it's a gladiator stadium. How you come down from that height?
Well, Gary, I was working with South Sydney with some of the players doing exactly that. Like that is such like the impact of coming in, having such an incredible career, being on such a high, being so famous and so well known, and then leaving that career for whatever reasons, sometimes not for the best of reasons as well. And then that come down is it's addiction plays a big part.
I'm sure it does, and I've learned a lot since leaving the police. And you lose your tribe, and that's what I lost when I left the police. That was my tribe. I spoke to some combat veterans after around the time I was leaving the police and writing a story about them and doing some stuff with them, and they were talking about leaving your tribe, and I see that with bikies. They're like, when they're breaking away from that, professional sportsmen, police, army guys. I would imagine it's a whole range. And even in your world, if you're a junkie, you had your crew that you would hang around with, and then you step out and you're very much on your own. So we all need that as a human. You need to feel part of something.
And for years, it's like that FOMO and those people, but you know, I had to change everything. When I finally got it, I needed to leave all those people behind, you know. And funny enough, there's no one, believe it or not, like there's no one in my life today that I grew up using drugs with. They're either dead, and big shout out to probably like 100 people I've known since I've entered recovery who are dead from heroin overdose, maybe some suicides, alcohol-related deaths. It's a war zone out there, mate.
It's terrible. I think it's what saddens me when I see, we've all got friends that alcohol is their problem. Their fun, their life of the party when they're on the alcohol and that. And then it gets to the point where it starts to become a problem for them. Whether it's a man or a lady, it becomes a problem for them. But then they've got friends but they make it exciting, so they still encourage them. You'll see these people turn up and say, "No, I'm not drinking anymore." Oh, come on, mate, have one. Yeah, it doesn't matter, just have one or two. And it's just sort of a pet hate of mine that people are supposedly people's friends do that. But it's human nature, because Danny's the fun of the party when he's having a drink, and now Danny's decided not to drink. Well, the party's not as much fun.
Yeah, I think a whole lot of psychology comes into that too. I think people feel uncomfortable I don't even think they all purposely do it. Like, I just think so much comes into factors that someone might offer you a drink because that's the only, for them to sit with you straight is uncomfortable, you know? So like me and my dad, the only time I ever connected with my dad was when I was stoned. Like now it's really uncomfortable with me and my dad.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. My comfort thing, come on, Dad, we'll have a beer.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's the thing. But when you sit, and it is a habit too, isn't it? Like
it is.
I think I'm awkward socially and in the social environment. And when you're standing there, and if you're not drinking, you're sort of it's your little comfort thing, isn't it? So.
Yeah, well, thank God I haven't had a drink for a long time, and for some reason I've got to say, and just to let anyone else know out there, like today I feel like I can do anything. Like this interview, actually, just so you know, I have not felt so nervous for some time. I always switch off to everything. It's my best advice to everyone is I just switch off and I just attack things as it comes. But with this, Gary, I really did do a whole bunch of research, and something you said earlier in this interview made me kind of really proud of that, because I feel like this has been such an incredible, interview to be able to have you here and chatting with you in regard we've had some wonderful conversation. Yeah, I can't believe it, bro. Yeah, honestly. Gary, is there something you would, before we take some questions, are you right for time? Are we good? No, good? Before we take some questions, have you got any words of wisdom? I think this is a pretty common question people ask, but have you got any words of wisdom or something you want to share with our viewers before we go to some questions?
Without sounding like I'm all zen and understand everything, what happened to me was a setback, and what I've seen in life, there will be setbacks everyone's going to have a setback for some reason. It's just, don't let it break you. And I made a conscious decision not to let it break me and let me become bitter or twisted, or it might just be emotional or sad. I thought, look out here, I'm still alive. What have I got to worry about? That's the lesson I've learned. Now, if people want to take that away, my life path could have gone. I could have been so fucking angry with what happened to me, and I could be just I could have been going just destroying myself. Not dissimilar to what Ken Marslew said. And I made the mistake with Ken. I said, the fact that you've overcome and forgiven these people. And he pulled me in straight away and said, I haven't forgiven. I've just channeled my anger in a positive direction. Way, yeah. And I think, if we do that, and then I get inspired by people like you, Danny. It's not pissing in your pocket. I mean, genuinely, you got to some low points and you've come out and you just got a bright. You make me laugh every time I see you. You're always happy. So good on you. And I think you spread that. Yeah,
I am blessed, Gary. Honestly, mate, I've got the most incredible life today, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Which just reminds me, guys, in reflecting on this interview, I know I touched on with Gary a couple of times about him being exactly where he's meant to be. But what really struck me, Gary, is at one moment there, I thought to myself, wow, he's right. Like, you were in the most pinnacle part of your career, being like in one of the highest positions doing these interviews. And now you taught me something. No wonder you kind of do wish you were still there, like that was an incredible.
Yeah, you can hang on to it, but I look at it and I look back with fond memories and go, I achieved what I wanted to achieve there, and now I'm doing something else. And if I stayed there, I would have died in the job. There would always be another case. So I was forced to leave, and I'm having fun, challenging myself in a different way. Danny, I get more nervous doing a podcast than I would sitting in an interview room
makes sense.
Against a suspect,
so used to it.
Because that was my go-to place. That was my world that I understood. So I'm sort of challenging myself in what I'm doing and having a bit of fun. But people find it funny when they see me laugh, because most people have identified with me when I'm talking serious. But that was because that's all the public saw was that I'm at a murder scene. You can't smile and you're talking heavy stuff. But I think we've all got to have the ability to laugh at ourselves. And just laugh at circumstances and try and stay happy.
And in the time I've known you, I've only seen this side of you, which is really cool. Yeah. Something you don't know, Gary, I actually have a big similarity with you and I in our careers.
Besides our hairstyle.
Oh yeah, besides the handsome bald man is I actually was I went down as resigning from my job as well, but I was actually fired for some stuff that I do on social media. But more importantly, I had my position in that job was so incredible too. Like I did some amazing work for such a long time. Yeah. And the position I had, the way I was working with high-risk offenders coming out of jail able to build these wonderful, big responsibility, but able to build these wonderful relationships. And I always was validated through my work by people coming back and saying, Danny, thank you for helping me. And in some ways, I always talk up like it was meant to happen. It was meant to be, but I really regret not being in that position.
Yeah, still you're probably feeling the same emotions I feel about it. And my learning from it is I look back and go, well, I enjoyed what I do, and everything has a time and place, doesn't it? That was your period of time when you're doing this, but now you're taking on things in a different way.
Yeah, well, now I do it in the public. And I used to help people one-on-one. Now I get to help people like one-on many,
and that ripple effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Let's have a look if we've got some questions. I don't know how we're going to do this. Sometimes, just so you guys know, it's really hard to go through. So what I would like to ask, if anyone does have any questions now, drop your questions now, and I'll look at the latest ones. And as I try and go back through some of the, please feel free to ask Gary any respectful questions, please, if you have any. And I'll just flick through and see if we've, I'll go back. There's been quite a few comments. A whole bunch of people saying hello. I've got a whole bunch of my regular team on here. Hey, Jess. Hey, Deb. Hey, Samantha. No real questions here. Haha, Danny. What's Gary's date of birth address? Gary, do you agree there's only 2 of us in this interview room? Oh, yes. Okay. That one. Yeah. Should have done that. Do you agree there's only 2 people in this? And do you acknowledge you're being recorded, Gary?
Yeah, you should have asked that.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of voice. What's this from? I think Danny is a great example of what most police officers would love to see. True, eh? Of course. That's like, stop giving them grief, I guess. All right, let's jump down and see if there's any questions here. Oh, yeah, okay. Good question, Daniel. Oh, Dan. Dan's a good friend, actually. Have you seen active addiction in the police? Can you answer that, Gary?
Yeah. I've seen it. Alcohol was definitely a problem. They brought drug testing in. I think like society has changed. Like it was, alcohol going back, 20 years ago, 30 years ago was a big issue. Then social drugs, kids coming in, young kids coming in the police now. So we get drug tested and we get alcohol tested, random tests. On a personal level, I saw people pre-Royal Commission days where, it was a bit rough and ready, work hard, play hard, and hit the drink. You lock people up during the week, and then Friday afternoon they start off as a lunch, and they end up in dinner on the drink. You probably weren't eating. And I saw the impact it had on people, and I saw how it started off as a social outlet to relieve a bit of the stress. But then when the job was on, I knew they were struggling because it was 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. We should be having a beer. So it was a problem. I don't see it as much anymore. Or when I left, the drinking culture had changed. But the police were just a reflection of society. I think. You could go into any industry and it'd pretty well be similar.
Cool, Dan. You've got a bunch of good questions here. I love this question here. Hang on. From Debbie. Good one, Gary. Do you think you got too close to the truth?
Oh,
cool. Good question, Deb.
Look, I don't think it was a case of too close to the truth, and people often say that. I think there was an opportunity to escalate that something that didn't escalate, and that's why someone moved on it. It stemmed from a HR issue, and I don't see the big sinister thing getting too close.
Cool. Kai, Gary's an absolute legend. Good man. Dan's got another question here. What's that one? Have you experienced active addiction in the cold? Gary, you have a lot of supporters, from the victims to family members to the public. I personally thank you for your service as a police officer and a good cop.
Look, that's, and I get that type of comments, and I can't stress how much I appreciate comments like that. Like if you're going to be a cop, and that's where I think we've lost it a little bit in policing. That what's the purpose of there? Well, we're there to serve the public, and the victims are the public. And I've got so much back from victims that I'm still in touch with all the time, catch up with them all the time. Families of people, cases I've worked on.
This one's a bit loaded. Gary, I don't know if you can answer this one. Do you think the foster grandparents know more than they have said?
No.
Good.
No. And, I've said that publicly. I think being hung out to dry. And I think really we need answers. And when I was talking about what was released in the media, that was of concern. But, on that, and again, I've said it publicly, when I took over the case, the foster parents were eliminated as suspects. And then when I ran the investigation, they're eliminated again, and then how it played out. I haven't changed my thinking. I haven't been on the investigation for 3 years, but at the time I was taken off the investigation, I think they'd provided all the information they had.
Cool. Samantha, hey, Samantha, how are you? What would you tell someone thinking to join the force?
Do it. And I mean this with a lot of passion and a lot of excitement. It mightn't be for everyone, but if that's something you want to do, don't have a regret and not go down that path. There's plenty of different things, as we've talked about, that you can do within the police. It doesn't have to be arresting people. There's crime scene, water police, pole air, surveillance, general duties. There's so much rescue squad. There is so much work that can be done. The only thing I caution you, if you do join the police, it will change you in some way. You got to accept that.
Gary just reminded me, guys. I literally, when I did escape from Silverwater prison in 2001, I literally had pole air, water police, the dog squad, the MEU, which is the Metropolitan Enforcement Unit, chasing me, and I managed to get away from all of them. I don't know if I'd do it today at 102 kilos, but I'm sorry. Hey, Samantha, thank you for this. And the cops who helped catch the guy who killed my mum were very supportive, and they were doing their jobs right. We wouldn't have. And if they were, hang on. So if they were doing their jobs right, we wouldn't have. If they weren't doing their jobs right, we wouldn't have found him. So they caught him, Samantha.
I love hearing comments like that.
Yeah, I bet you do.
It warms my heart. And there is so many good police out there, and the fact that that's the recollection you've got. I'm sad for what you've been through, but it's a lot worse if you haven't got police there supporting you. So
yeah, I knew, Samantha. This is a bit of a loaded one too. I don't know what the Hoodle Street is, but we can't trust the police anymore. Not after Hoodle Street. That could be an American thing, is it?
There was a Hoddle Street massacre.
Thanks, Amanda.
That Julian Knight is sometimes referred to it, where I think he shot seven people in the pole air, the police helicopter.
Right.
There was another incident down in Melbourne where there was that car that was driving around. I'm not sure if that's what is being referred to there. There was criticism of the police that they didn't intervene earlier. So,
Maddie, you're both doing amazing work. Thanks so much, Maddie. I just sent another good question here. What was it? Oh God, there's lots of questions coming through. But will there be any more live shows or books in the future, Gary?
At this stage, I'm not sort of committed to where discussions about another book. After I finished the first book, I said never again. After I finished the second book, I said never again. So I don't know. With the live shows, there's nothing planned other than, and this is an interesting twist, Michael Francis is a mafia bloke from New York, one of the biggest mafia people in United States. He's out of the mafia now. He's coming over here in October, I think, and they've asked me to host a show with him. I had him on a guest as a podcast, so that's going to be quite interesting. And I think we're doing a tour around the country.
All right, guys. Let's just take this last one from Dan. Another good question. Oh no, it wasn't that one. It was guys, sorry, it's a little bit hard. There is a bunch of stuff coming through.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, we get some good some good questions there too, isn't there? I don't know, Gary, can you see anything do you wanted to answer? Thank you, Mel. Thank you to Peter too. Gary, do you think you got close to the truth? We've kind of answered that. Yeah. Here's one from one of my. Do you think police recruitment should be stricter? Time to training changed. Thanks, Melissa.
Should be stricter to train.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that. But I guess.
Look, I think. What I would like with police recruiting is that you get the best of the best, and good people that fit the job. And the only way we can do that is make it attractive. But policing, it's changed the type of people that are joining policing now. And what I like to see in policing is people that choose it for a vocation, not just for a brief experience. I was a career police officer, and I think they're the type of police that you want, people that want to make a career out of policing.
Yeah, cool. And we'll just wrap it up this one. Thanks, Debbie. I agree too. Debbie saying she believes you would have solved the material case if you had the opportunity to stick around.
Look, thanks, Debbie. I can't say whether I would. No, I would never sort of say if they didn't take me off. But the only thing I can say, I was comfortable with the direction that was pointed in at the time. And look, there's not. I don't think there would be a police officer that doesn't want to see it solved. And we need to solve it. We need to be judged by it. So let's hope that occurs.
Thank you, everyone, for all the encouragement, support, all the views. Gary, thank you so much for coming out here and sharing your truth with us. It's been an amazing interview, mate.
I've enjoyed it, Danny, and keep up the good work, Danny.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. I should add, I had John Killick on here last week. It was his 24-year anniversary of the Great Escape.
He's another classic, isn't he?
Yeah, we should.
Love John.
You've had him on I Catch Killers, haven't you?
Yeah. And I catch up with him a bit, John.
Good on you.
Good old school.
That's great. Yeah, he's doing some wonderful stuff out there. Big shout out.
He did it easier than you. He got a helicopter in. You just climbed over a barbed wire fence.
Look, I've got nothing on John. What an incredible, the greatest helicopter escape ever, mate. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.